Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It is the 8th of March, 2025, and spring is in the air. Well, what am I watching? It's a quieter weather pattern, although there are still a few things to talk about. And down the road, I think it's going to get stormier. As you would expect in a March pattern, there's a pretty progressive pattern going on. So we're not going to go more than a day without some sort of weather system producing some precipitation or something meaningful to talk about. So that's what I've outlined here. Mid-South weather system that we'll show you. Another couple of them coming on down the line next week, and generally a milder pattern for much of the U.S. at least to start the week. Maybe toward the finish of the week, things will get chillier in some locations. Let's take a look at the visible satellite. Always fun to look at the detail of this. You can see some of the higher tops of some of these showers and occasional thunderstorms there that have left Texas and drifted northward into Oklahoma and Arkansas. We'll show you a radar report of that here in a minute. Otherwise, there's not a lot of precipitation on the map, really. There is some rain in extreme northwest portions of Washington. And really, that's about it. So let's take a look at the 500 millibar flow. Cutoff low here, right on the border between Texas and New Mexico. And generally a flow of northwesterly winds aloft from Minnesota into the northeast. Still chilly around the Great Lakes and in the northeast, but not terribly cold. And if it weren't for this storm, this would be a very warm pattern right here. Because this ridge of high pressure right here would dominate the entire thing. But this is going to leave eventually, so we'll show you that here in a minute. I show you this map now. It helps to outline these areas of vorticity that are actually on the other map, but are kind of hard to see. And these are just areas of spin or rotation, so you can see little disturbances go around the main flow like that. And then there are little tiny shear areas here that usually don't produce a whole lot of weather unless there's just exceptional instability or moisture available. But generally speaking, it's a pretty quiet weather pattern, with the only exception being this weather system right here. Well, let's take a look at a radar tour of the U.S., and really the only storm of importance is this one here, producing widespread rain and some thunder through Oklahoma and portions of Arkansas, these areas here and here. Now, not really severe weather makers, although some of these reports down here as we zoom in were hail reports around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I believe I saw a 1-inch hail report down there. Let's click on that and see what that is. Yeah, a delayed report, 1-inch hail there. And on the south side of Dallas, again, 1-inch hail reports from those storms there. Zooming out, this is actually snow in the Panhandle. And then when the storm was over New Mexico, it had produced some storm reports as well. So we'll click on some of these higher snow totals here. There we got over a foot of snow. In the Panhandle, though, the highest I've seen so far is 2-inch snow totals. And that's probably going to be about it. They may get up to 4 inches. There is a winter storm warning in effect for a part of that portion of Texas. Otherwise, if I zoom out to the whole U.S. here, there's not a whole lot else going on. Those snow reports that you see there in Ohio and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, this is 24 hours worth of reports. So that actually already happened. And then there's still some kind of lingering snow in New England and maybe some rain in extreme northwest Washington. Otherwise, the country is pretty quiet and pretty dry. Well, the Storm Prediction Center ranks the possibility of severe weather, which is strong winds, large hail, or tornadoes, from 1 to 5. So this first area here, green, is their lowest probability here, a marginal risk, and it runs from Dallas all the way into the Florida Panhandle. And I did see, just before I started recording, they did extend this slightly for later on tonight into more of northern Florida. And so when it says Saturday like that, that forecast goes for 24 hours, and it's meant to start, well, until we change the clocks, at 6 a.m., until 6 a.m. the next morning. So if you're wondering why they're elongated like this, it's just going to take a while for storms to travel along these areas. Same with this forecast. This is for Sunday, so this is meant to pick up where the last one left off. And again, that weather system is kind of moving through the deep southeast, and will produce that first of the 5 probabilities of precipitation being severe in southern Georgia and northern Florida on Sunday. Here's a look at the advisories. This is the same advisories that I've had up now for the last couple of days because the weather pattern is pretty much the same. It's milder. There aren't that many snow advisories, winter weather advisories, and winter storm warnings there in the Texas Panhandle and parts of Oklahoma. A very windy pattern as you're always going to get when strong jet stream winds blow over the Rockies like that. And so that is very true of northern Montana and North Dakota. And red flag warnings are for outdoor burning, and they usually expire right around 6 or 7, maybe even 8 in the evening. So by the time you see those there in Texas, those will probably be expired. Well, heavy rain and or snow, a little bit in Oklahoma. You see that purple shading right there. That's 1.5 inches of liquid precipitation. Most of that, though, I think is going to be rain, but it does change over to snow somewhere in there. So again, you're going to be looking at the winter weather advisory there. So that's generally meant to be precipitation snow expected to be under 4 inches. And then you can obviously see there's a pretty big bullseye in northern Florida, southern Georgia. That's where that same weather system that's producing the severe weather threat will be. So this is Saturday through Monday. So it's actually a 3-day forecast, almost a 2.5-day forecast now by the time you see this. But we're looking at 2 to 3 inch rain totals in that part of the world. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Let's look at the flow of things. We're going to use the EPS model. This is the ensemble model of the European long-range forecast model. It kind of blends everything together for us and gives us probably a little more realistic picture, especially the more out in time that we go. But you can see that cutoff system that I was talking about today sitting here over New Mexico. That's the one that's going to slowly slip over the southern United States here over the next couple of days. And as we move this forward, we'll see there's another one almost identical to it that's coming along. Big ridge of high pressure right here. That's going to keep things warm and dry, except for the very extreme northwest portion of the state of Washington and up into British Columbia. But for the most part, the United States is not going to be affected by that weather system, at least not till later in this loop. So we watch this go through here. So this is Sunday about noon. So this system here in the south that is going to be producing more rain in Florida and as you saw, some severe storm possibilities. But meanwhile, for the most part, a big ridge of high pressure develops over the central plains, and that means warmth for much of the U.S., even New England, which is still hanging on to cooler temperatures. I think by the end of this sequence, you'll start to see that the 500 millibar flow is more favorable up there for warmer temperatures. And already you start to see another storm system kind of creeping into view there, just off frame. And that is the first one that's going to come along. That's going to look a lot like this one, actually, as it goes across the extreme southern part of the U.S. But let's advance this forward. This is Monday at about lunchtime. Very zonal flow, meaning just west to east across the northern part of the country. So not an opportunity really to take any cool air and dive it very far south. Now, naturally, when lows develop along that, there are cold fronts associated with them, and they do drop down into the northern U.S., but nothing real bad coming our way. And then there's this system here, and as I told you, this one is looking a lot like the last one, only a little bit further south this time, but cut off from the main flow. So you have a ridge of high pressure in the northern plains, and then this little cutoff system kind of traversing underneath it. And that's going to produce some rain. I think it may tap into the possibility of some unstable air and some severe thunderstorms by the middle of next week, but there's too much model discrepancy still on that idea, so we're going to hold off on talking about that one. And speaking of model discrepancy, this very strong storm is actually being modeled fairly accurately, I think, on both computer models. But this far out, though, I'm still kind of suspect of the timing. But the main point about this system, and this is the map as it'll look very early on Friday, is that this is a very deep trough of low pressure, and it has a negative tilt to it, so it's going to open up into the plains. And if we can get enough moisture out ahead of that, oh, I hate when it does that. If we can get enough moisture out ahead of it, there we go, I want to do that, and then we can get maybe some severe storms popping out of that. But the problem is, let me back that up for a second here. The problem is this system right here that we were just showing you, this weak little one in the south, is going to send a little bit of continental air down over the Gulf. meaning there's going to be some air that comes in behind this at the surface and goes this way and will kind of shunt the higher dew points and the deeper moisture off with the approach of this bigger storm. So well, that may have an impact on how unstable the air can be. But this is forecast to be a pretty big storm. And this is a Saturday, so this is really fantasy land. This is 8 days away, essentially. So anyway, but just to let you know that there's a little system on Wednesday in the deep south, Texas, Louisiana, into the southeastern states. And then all eyes are probably going to be on this big system here in the desert southwest. Let's look at high temperatures on Monday. The numbers of the Weather Service predictions for the various cities. If it's red and yellow, it's above normal. If it's green and blue, it's below normal. And that system in the southeast, by virtue of the fact that it's got a lot of rain and cloud cover with it, will keep things relatively cool down there in Georgia and Florida. But meanwhile, much of the country, and we're trying to get northern Maine to get into the warmer temperatures here. Almost, but they're still showing up below normal with highs in the 30s there on Monday and even the 20s. But highs in the 60s and 70s common throughout much of the central and northern plains and much of the Midwest as well. Monday going into Wednesday, still can't shake the cool temperatures in New England. Again, the storm track is running again along here, so I really should change my pen color to black. Anyway, so that's why they keep getting slight little incursions of cool air, nothing nearly as monumental as a few weeks back, but still pretty cold. But you can obviously see much of the country is going to be warm and cooling trends in the west. So now I want to show you the next one on Friday. The battle lines, so to speak, are being drawn. You can clearly see something's going on here, and we talked about that deep storm system that's going to be affecting the western and eventually the central U.S. Still some question marks on timing, but it's a very divisive system and very warm and a very sharp cutoff to very cool temperatures in the western U.S. And how that's going to impact people, this is a hazardous weather outlook that the Weather Service puts out. So there's at least a moderate risk of some pretty good snows through the Dakotas and Minnesota, period March 14th through the 15th, and also through much of the mountainous ranges of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And then on the liquid side, heavy rain potential, hazardous weather potential, slight to moderate risk of that through the Appalachian mountain chain and down into the Tennessee River Valley into the southeast. That's March 14th through 16th. And the liquid equivalent of what I just showed you snow-wise, that same period, the 14th through the 16th. And while we're on the subject, we're looking down the road. Here's the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, and it shows that divisiveness set up by this series of storms with a very cool forecast for the western U.S. and a pretty warm one for the eastern U.S., including finally extreme northern New England. Precipitation, that system in the southeast, two of them actually, producing a little bullseye of above normal chances for precipitation, and we're setting up a pretty good flow of precipitation ahead of that big deepening storm out in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.